Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Finance Committee. It's March 5th and it's 9 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. So Ida, roll call, please.
Chair Shelley,
Here.
Dr. Barber,
Here.
Dr. Blackwelder.
Chair.
We have a quorum.
Great. All right, next on the agenda is the election of the Finance Committee Chair and Vice Chair for 2025. So I suppose at this point, it's between Jerry and I, since Kim will be leaving the committee and Bruce will be on. I'm happy to remain chair. Would you like to be vice chair here?
Oh, yes, thanks.
Hold it down here, hold it down.
It's my dream.
Okay, well, is there any further discussion? Any public comment on this item?
So I still, let's see, Bruce has his hand. So
Okay,
Dr. Jabbar.
yeah. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, sorry to barge in. I'm happy with the motion. I'm just listening in as a non-committee member, and I want to be sure that I'm not going to violate the Brown Act by having too many folks. I would like to listen, but I wanted to just check in before I did.
Great, thank you. I think you're good. There's just 3 of us here, and then with you being online, I think we're good. So thank you
All
for
right.
checking.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring it back. There's no official motion. Would someone like to make an official motion?
Do we have to?
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm able to or not, since I'm here in alternate.
Sure.
capacity.
I think so.
Okay, so moved.
Okay,
Second.
okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, we'll move on to public communications. Anyone wishing to address the board? I don't see anyone in here. Anyone online? Nope. Okay. All right, we'll move on to our discussion items. 5A is discuss the guiding principles, the revised October 2004.
All right, thank you, Chair. At this time, I'd like to thank the board for attending the workshop, and this is a carryover item from that workshop that we discussed. Guiding principles was revised in 2004. We're here in 2025. I really would like to get some guidance from this committee on revising those and getting an updated policy to the next board meeting. So did you guys have a chance to review some of those guiding principles? Would you like to go through them now and give feedback, or would you like to give feedback, through the chair and then through the general manager to complete the task and bring a draft revision of this policy? I think this policy lacks a couple of things. This doesn't have a title like the regional waste policy does. It's more general of these are the principles. So we would like to maybe give it a title along the way. And then revisit the items that have made us the organization that we are today, and see if they still exist as we move forward to some of those items that we want to better address. The landfill infrastructure. Do we want to be independent or dependent of external contracts? And then the longevity that the service of the landfill operation can give and deliver to the member agency. So those were carryover items and discussions. So Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good. We probably have time to go through each of these bullet points on this document. I think some of them are kind of a no-brainer, easy. I think others, it's interesting to think about what we might want to add to this, how our organization has developed since 2004, what might be pertinent that's not on here now. I think that obviously the biggest, well, anyways, let's just go through each. Or is everyone okay with that?
Sound good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both one pagers, and we do have time. Today's the time. these items we're gonna bring to we were gonna present them to the personnel. We did have to cancel because we were aware that we weren't gonna have a quorum late last night.
Oh,
So we
okay,
made the adjustment, but we would like to bring these items back to the board in March to stick to the aggressive timeline
right,
to achieve a final approval on our budget in roughly in May. We would like to get it done early this year. Thus having all these conversations we're gonna work at a very fast pace to try to achieve the goal to get these drafts back in for this next board meeting so that we can at least review the draft and hear the rest of the board and then come back and bring finals back, maybe present in the committee meeting and then bring back to the April board meeting to adopt these items and then to continue to work side by side with those additions of getting the scope of budget prepared along with the principles kind of at the same time. Yeah.
good. So it's sort of using this as a means to
Yes.
sort of guide our budget discussions. Yeah, okay, great. Let me just be clear. So there's the October 15th, 2004 guiding principles, and then it was it revised again in 2000, well, it has, so there's a September 2005 document, two separate documents, and then that was revised in November 2007. So we kind of just have two documents.
Two documents, and that's the two separate items, 5A and 5B. So we'll start off with
okay.
5A,
Great,
which is a document that just has guiding principles
it.
revised on
Okay.
October 15th of 2004.
yeah, okay. All right, well, first bullet point, the district governance structure, maintaining existing governance structure. I don't think we had, what is staff, well, do you want to go through the bullets? and just say yours?
I have some personal notes. I did
Yeah.
ask staff to also take a look at the document and see what we were gonna be recommending when we had the discussion.
Right,
For the district governance structure, it is the existing member agencies.
Yeah.
And at that time was not to bring on any other agencies. Even with external agreements or internal agreements, those discussions would need to be had before we change this policy. We were saying it stays exactly as written.
Yeah.
As is.
I would agree with that too. I can't, there
There's no
hasn't,
change.
yeah, there hasn't been any talk on expanding, so.
I think one of the elements to that were originally being written was that there was discussions with Salinas Valley
Mm,
that went back that goes back even before this about merging the
Potentially merging.
agencies or having some sort of agreement where they would have a disproportionate or a vote based on population.
oh, I see.
And I think that was a decision, that's why it was written, that ReGen would keep its governing structure with the way it is, where it's not power is distributed by population.
Right,
And so that was, I believe, the origin of that.
okay.
Makes sense.
Moving on to the next
Yeah.
item, labor policy, continue to operate district facilities with district staff and do not use outside contractors to provide primary district services. We're currently practicing that now. We have no need to seek external support for our operations at this time.
Right.
We would recommend that it stays the same.
Yeah, and in terms of primary, I'm assuming that just means landfill. Or is that, I mean, we maybe, we contract out for compost. So I don't know if we need to, further define what our primary district services are. So we're all clear on that, I guess.
Again, for context, there are some public agencies that will contract out operation of the landfill, operation of the MRF, operation of the power plant, all these things that we run now as a public agency with public agency staff. Some entities do contract that out where there's a public entity that owns the land or the operation and permits, but then somebody else operates.
I think we're doing just fine.
And we'll take the feedback and we'll add language in there that we could reference as
right,
further defining it, the MRF operation
Right,
is
just-
ran by
just-
district.
yeah.
The landfill operation is ran by district, the LFG plant is ran by district. Composting yard is not ran by district, and just defining those major objectives of the organization.
Yeah,
Moving on to the third item, reserve policy and debt service ratios, maintaining district policy of retaining 25% of the operating expense budget in reserve, maintain service ratios as required in bond covenant. Where does Mr. Garth at? This item, I believe, needs to be updated. I think we have 20% of the reserve,
Operating
reserve,
operating expense reserve, yes.
and we are meeting the bond
They
covenant
are in
requirement.
compliance with all the bond covenants.
So we
We
just,
certify that every year.
I think it stays the same. We just recommend that we get the actual percentage correct.
mhm.
Is there a desire to increase that from the board position?
I would like to at least interject if I may.
Yes, yes,
You know, in the last few budgets, you talked about, San Jose backing off, and that caused a lot of, deficit in our budget, you know what I mean? And then we had the thing with the MERP for a short period of time. So in that context, you feel comfortable with 25%?
Yeah, we have been able to meet that requirement reasonably comfortably, in the prior years, but it's not been close
Right.
goal to achieve, so it's not a problem.
Because millions, I mean, you know, we're sitting there and you say, oh, we're gonna lose $1 million, it's like, it's kind of a lot of money. Of course, the nation's trillion, so I guess it's all relative. So, anyway, that's all I'm gonna,
Just,
I'm good with it, 25%.
again, just to clarify, it's 20% though.
20% is what our goal.
I was gonna say 20, but I actually liked his idea of the 25 because of the issue that we were having with, some of the decreases that we talked about in the board meeting. And some of the questions that are coming for the future for some of the contracts.
I think 25 is certainly a reasonable goal as well. So 20% is not a real challenge to be passed, so 25% should not be pretty difficult.
Did we have a policy change? Like this was like 25% was the policy at that time, and then we had a policy change to 20%, or are we just sort of over time have migrated to 20%?
I think it's the latter.
Okay.
Every time migrated.
Keep in mind, the reserve is just, funds that are spoken for that are reserved for that purpose. There's still cash in other areas of the business that are non-restricted, which also could be used for some whatever purpose we define.
Mhm.
So moving the bar over by 5% does move the bar into the available funds for unrestricted cash as well.
Mhm.
So want to make sure it's like the whole picture is known, that it's not just we only have that reserve, it's that we're not gonna spend that, it's gonna keep it tucked away. But we still have operating liquid cash that we use for other items.
And we've maintained the 20% for a while.
Yes.
And that's been okay.
In addition to that, this past year, we implemented the closure and post-closure reserves as well.
Right.
So that further reduces the available.
But, cause I see is the October 15, 2004 meeting back when they had it was at 25%. Is that maintain district policy, retaining 25% of the operating expense of the reserve was, so. I don't see that there should, I mean, especially after hearing from Garth, it should be an issue to go back to 25%.
Bruce, I see your hand up. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I didn't know if I'm taking notes and I would have some comments, but I don't know if you wanted me to comment as we go or comment all at the end as a public member.
I'm fine. Rob, do you have something to say about this? It looked like you have something to say.
I do. Yeah, Bruce is not a member of the committee, and he can listen, he can sit and listen. He cannot participate in the committee meeting.
I can't offer comment, Rob, as a public member since
No,
that,
no, you're not a public member.
okay, I thought if there wasn't a quorum, that it wouldn't violate the Brown Act if I made comment, but I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, no, you have to be a member of the committee, or as I say, a board member who's not a member of the committee can watch the committee meeting, cannot participate in it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll call on you for comment at the end, Bruce. Okay, so, so it looks like we're kind of going back and forth between 20 and 25%.
I recommend that we just go back, look at the 25 relative to dollars means, and then we can come back and make the suggestion. If we stick to 25, this is how much we'll increase to that reserve fund,
Yeah,
and then we can make a decision whether it goes down to 20 or stays at 25.
okay, okay, sounds good.
Moving on to the next item, range of waste management services and recycling diversion rates. Continue to provide existing recycling and landfill services while maintaining diversion rates of at least 50% for member agencies. Service levels could be increased if additional revenue becomes available and additional programs, such as food waste, composting could be added. I think this needs a revision. We will add language and suggest language where we can apply the 50%. We are a lot closer to 65. The mandate is no longer a diversion percentage. They do a calculated process based on weight and origin and set out rate. So they're looking at pounds per home. So this is a little bit off. I think 50% is the original 8939 number that was distributed to most of the regions in California. So we will update and make a suggestion on some language for this item here. Moving on to landfill capacity and service area. I think this one is one that we really gonna spend some time on. This is talking about existing landfill life for member agencies. It may be the track that we're already headed to. But this could be more relative, as in we can continue to direct folks to the policy and reiterating the expectation from the organization. Consider a policy establishing a minimum of 75 to 80 year landfill life to serve projected waste streams exclusively generated by the Monterey Regional Waste Management District and its member agencies. Just in that first sentence, I'm gonna make a hard recommendation that we pick a number. I think that you give us a range. The range is relative to how compaction and how much volume we're going in there. But we have a pretty good idea. I think we can say it's 75 years or 80 years or 100 years, or from here moving forward. We don't know what that is, but I think we hear from you guys now at this time on the 80 year for member agency services only and excluding regional waste volume.
Mhm. I feel like, so I guess some of the things I think is like, okay, where did they come up with that number? I'd be curious where 75 to 80 years comes from. Are you familiar with any other landfills having a sort of a, an
Yes.
established?
So we do have San Benito County. They had a 15-year term, and they're exercising that now. So San Benito County, which is the facility just located on the outskirts of Hollister, and they hit their 15-year mark of exclusive service to that county. And so they're not taking external waste there at that facility. They have a couple of big decisions to make, and I think 15 years is really putting them on a short time frame when you look at what a landfill expansion time frame could look like for them, or developing infrastructure to bring a transfer station that could bring all the materials once they fully expire the landfill, and then ship it off and deliver it to a potential landfill siting for their county waste. So they're at that point. I think 15 years is a very short duration. I think 75 years is a big one, but if we're gonna talk about dependency or independency of agreements, it would not even be relevant at that time. Because external waste contracts that could come that have more favorable pricing for the organization could be evaluated and saying this is going to be the impact to the total term of the landfill. So if we had 120 years, we entered into a 10-year agreement, what does it mean in landfill life, as well as dollars to the organization? So that's pretty much the way we would evaluate it. So I think this item could be moved if we decide that we want to move forward with increases to become independent over an 11-year period. And approaching the expiration of the largest regional agreement that we have in 2036.
So, go ahead.
For context, most landfills, if they have greater than 25 years, they're feeling pretty good about their capacity. And it's not, it's not something that would necessarily cause for alarm. They need to start discussing what they're gonna be doing, but it's not uncommon to have less than 25 years or 25 years or greater. Actually, if you have 25 years or greater, it's kind of doing pretty well. So one of the things to think about with this is maybe having a tiered approach where discussions happen at 75 years, where you decide if you want to continue going along, and I think the way it's written, it's like an absolute. And that we shall stop receiving outside tonnage. If that's 75 years, is just a lot can happen in 75 years. If we look back 75 years, now we're looking at 1950 and waste generation rates of 1950 compared to what they are today. So it may be a tiered approach that we could take instead of being absolute about it. That's just something for the board to consider.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I guess I feel more comfortable having it be tiered. Like, I don't feel like I can predict the future. And so saying for sure 75 years and anything excess from that, we're okay with taking regional hits beyond that. Yeah, so I guess since we don't know what the future is, I mean, I'm happy with the length of the life that we have of our landfill. So I like that idea of sort of revisiting. Again, I don't know why you would pull out 75 to 80 years only in that. I guess if you think of our landfills having maybe 100 years, 120 years of life, so then you're looking at excess of, like 30, 40 years. And so we sort of sell that additional space to regional contracts. I suppose without knowing any additional information at this point in time with what's going to happen in the future, we move with what we know. And yeah, I don't know. It's, I suppose it's a good decision to have to make, that we have that ability.
Yeah.
So, anything else from?
I agree. I mean, we were just guessing. I mean, what if we're in complete compliance with organics? Wouldn't that extend the life of our, so there are things that are changing. And then it came up at one point that the possibility of purchasing some, land outside.
Right.
So we can increase it. Because in another 50, 60 years, there's gonna be a real issue with waste, kind of like New York's, and there is no place to put it. You have to ship it somewhere else. I don't know what that's gonna look like. But again, we don't know what that's gonna look like, so things change, and I think just, putting it like that and moving forward.
And I agree with your assessment. When we extend the landfill life for our members, we're really extending the date and point where we're gonna start having to pay and incorporate transfer fees. So we add some complexities to it, because now we pay a higher rate to get this material out. We also have higher impacts to the environment because we're putting more vehicles on the road. I know we're going towards less emissions with vehicles on the road, but we're not there yet. And so we have to have these considerations. So staff will take what we've heard from, Barbara, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was getting ready to after he spoke. I like the tiered idea because there are so many different policies that are coming. We don't know what it looks like. You know, things are very volatile right now, so you don't know what policies are coming and what policies are gonna be cut. It's gonna impact. It's like Gary was talking about with the organics and how that impacts it. So you don't know what other policies may come up that may impact it. So I like the tiered approach, being able to go back and assess, you know, for that time period. Because like you said, 75 years ago, you're talking about, 1950s. Well, how would you be able to assess this now? You know, so yeah, I like that.
Great, so I'm hearing you guys like a tiered approach, that's an evaluation possibly at every 25-year mark, where we're reevaluating to see if the
Mhm.
circumstance is the same. It could be, maybe we would insert some language there as well, where, if we're curious about it, we can bring back the language, right? Maybe having that said in there is at any time, we could reevaluate our position on it
Mhm.
based on the change in the market or change in the philosophy. I think the next section I'm gonna jump into are more related to what was going on at that time. So we'll look to take that language out and just accommodate the language that could be in the future, and that's really looking at agreements. In two versions, one in a monetary version, but also what is it gonna do to the landfill life before we enter into an agreement? So we have an idea of what that associated impact. But there may be reasons, and I'll give some sample reasons of why we may want to negotiate agreement on better, favorable rates. It could be MERF 3.0. We looked at MERF 3.0, it's about a $6 million project that is not funded at this time. We do have, designated cash and undesignated cash and restricted cash available. But always kind of looking at where we're gonna be at in the future. So we may have a need. And if someone's willing to pay the gate rate or exceeding the gate rate to use our landfill capacity, and it gives us an opportunity to create new infrastructure or address aging infrastructure. So we may see more items come to us on the aging infrastructure of our gas collection system. Other work that we can be performing now, because the way I would look at it is, when we started with the system, it was brand new. We've operated that since 1964 when we first started landfilling. We have to do another reevaluation. Is it just some tires that need to be changed, or is it really time for a new automobile for the next 120-year lug that we have as an organization? So those will be opportunities where we can say, well, maybe it's not now, but the sooner we can hit those infrastructure items, we're creating the longevity. And we can utilize the surface area, what it's intended for, because the infrastructure is supporting the additional landfill in future years. So we will take a big red line to this item here and probably take out some of the existing. I'm gonna go through the rest of the language, and it's really talking about some business opportunities that existed at that time that we may be in now or did not achieve at that time. Certified landfill capacity exceeding the 75 to 80 years would be considered excess capacity, which could be considered for sale to the county of Santa Cruz and the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority at market rates. The purpose of the sale of the excess capacity is to mitigate further rate increases to Monterey Regional Waste Management District member agencies, and to permit the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority and the county of Santa Cruz to adequate time to identify and develop additional long-term landfill capacity within their respective jurisdictions. The board authorized staff to meet with the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority and the county of Santa Cruz to discuss perimeters for the possible acceptance of additional waste. So it's kind of talking sequences where the opportunity was. I think those still exist, but I think we can reword it where it's not only them two, it could be
Yeah.
I was
whoever
gonna say, we
comes.
need to open it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments from Mark, Steph? And getting the final one, which is rate policies. The board discussed rate policy, including a $3 to $5 per ton increase in 2005, with an annual increase thereafter of $1 per ton to ensure fiscal solvency and financing the ongoing range of waste and recycling services provided by the district. Staff was asked to provide additional information regarding rate increase options for the board at their November meeting. You know, although this language exists, it was not the path that it followed for some years. The staff was challenged to not impose rate increases and change their ability to generate revenue. And one of those outcomes was that long-term agreement for regional waste customers to be delivered here. That's what mitigated rate increases for several years because it was the feel that the organization need to operate very at an easier position than just trying to make the bottom line of payroll. They became more efficient as volume came in. Headcount didn't change proportionally to the ratio of volume that came in, thus allowing the organization to run its MRF more efficiently with the additional volume and the landfill more efficiently with the additional volume. Same pieces of equipment, just operating at a more efficient time pattern. This item, I'd like to bring a philosophy back to the organization based on annual CPIs. And then potentially, as we discussed in our item, we'd like to, finance is working on modeling some opportunities for us in an 11-year period. So maintain the pathway of annual CPIs to keep up with the rates. We're giving CPI increases to our employees, and we should be able to keep up with that with an annual CPI increase. The second ask is going to see how palatable it is to bring the revenue generation that we need for the additional revenue gap or the revenue goal that we have for losing that regional contract. As we get to item number 5C, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the gap of that existing contract is about $9 million a year. So if we start now, we can incrementally increase the CPI plus a revenue goal to achieve the long-term revenue gap that we would have in 2036. That would help us become independent, save the landfill life for a longer period of time. And as time goes on, get more preferable pricing on external contracts for lesser volume. So it doesn't need to be all this volume. It could be this amount, but at the gate rate or higher than the gate rate amount would be incrementally less volume going into the landfill, giving us a longer term view. So we're not quite there yet. I think some aspects of what that increase would look like on the revenue goal would be dependent on, do we put it over just solid waste, trash only? Or do we increase other rates proportionally along the way to reduce that item? We're aware that if we just put it on the trash item, it's about 9% total with the CPI. So CPI plus about another 6% would be the goal if it was just over trash. But if we spread it over food waste, green waste, we can start looking at what those attributes are to achieve the 9 million. So maybe 9% is 8 or 7.5 across more items rather than just trash only. So it's I'm asking more of getting feedback so that as we develop the work and the profile for it, we're not doing so much rework on the concept. So I think this time it's hearing a little bit from you.
Yeah, I guess when I think about rate increases, either for just waste or across the board, my question would be like, who's that gonna impact? Tell me who, you know, give me the profile of the person that's gonna impact so that we know.
And so we're working on that, and we know for sure that it'll impact our member agencies, right? So we would have an increase, which is a percentage. Last year was about 4.7% because we rounded down on the gate rate. We requested 5, but we implemented 4.7. And for a residential customer that pays for a 32-gallon can, there was no city that paid more than 20 cents per month additional rate for a 4.5%. So if you double that, you're talking, 40-cent max increase and as low as 25 cents, depending on the city rate structure. That is one, and then the other is the direct haul folks where the gate rate is jumping. So if we had 8% roughly or 9% roughly, we would go from $77 a ton to $82 a ton. So those are the two significant impacts. The customers that are running small business will be impacted, about $6 a ton. And then you have the member agencies where the profile, there's more customers, so that number gets a whole lot smaller, quicker, depending on the city that you're in. So it's one plus the other equals the total value that we're looking for of $9 million.
And residential is being impacted too, individuals.
Yeah, they're the 40 cents to about 25-cent range if we implemented the 9% across MSW.
And the reason why it's such a small percentage to the residential customer in comparison to the percent increase in the gate rate is because the majority of the cost that residences and even commercial businesses pay goes towards the hauling services. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 85–86% of the cost that you pay on your bill is for hauling services. And the smaller portion, 15 or so percent is for our the actual disposal services. And
It's under 2%. I think we
Thank
talked
you for that. Sure.
Yeah.
to Dave Hilton, and he says, our piece in the component for the collection side at your curb service is only about 1% of the total increase that they go and ask the city for.
Additional thoughts on it?
Does that still put us below regional rates?
Well, that would put you on a path to be only regional rates and nobody getting, other than those existing contracts that are already negotiated before we make this decision here. But everything after, we would say, why would we want to give it away at a lesser rate? Because our trek or our philosophy is gonna be, we care about landfill term more than we care about that short-term revenue, but if that's the philosophy, we need to do something with the revenue to make up that difference. For the last, when 2036 comes, we'll have 30 years of support from external regional customers to keep our costs down. That should have been enough years to develop the plan at the beginning of the concept to say we will become independent over time in 30-year period increments, but because it was rich in value, it hasn't been a forward thought. This is an 11-year projection with an expectation that you and me and her will probably not be here at 2036. We're making decisions that far ahead because the impact is much less. So when we look at those values for residential customers, it's in the cents. For commercial customers, about $1.50 to $3. And then you go to the gate rate and they have the $4 or $5 increase. That's significant, because that's small business charging it back out to residents, but it gets us to where we want to be at with the independency. It's a value. So as we start putting the pieces together, we'll show you what that $9 million attribute is. That's the goal. In year 1, 2, and 3, we'll start earning some of those dollars, which will help us in a couple of fronts. Pay off debt faster, put the money aside for MERS 3.0, fix the infrastructure that you're gonna be using for a long period of time before these dollars go away, right? And we're kind of supplementing slowly as we get there. When we get there, I'm not so confident that it's the same percent every year, because we're doing stuff as an organization. It's something that we want to look at, but the philosophy should reflect, yes, for these 11 years, it's CPI plus whatever that revenue goal is based on the changes that are happening every year, right? I can give you a number and say it's 9% every year to get us to the number, but that means absolutely nothing else around us changes. Our operation efficiency is getting better. I think we're on when we look at our operational expense, it's on a trend of less year over year. We have opportunity in the landfill gas to have better run times. We have opportunity with that agreement with Monterey One Water. So we can be adding more revenue in there, reducing the revenue goal, but the philosophy should be have a revenue goal in there every year. As we approach, we're gonna see, are we gonna crash land at 2036, or are we gonna, throw the chute out and we're gonna land on our feet and kind of walk away from it, being prepared for the next chapter? And that's a chapter with less regional waste and preference on that regional waste and the value of that regional waste. When we entered into that agreement, it was because we didn't want to have increases to member agencies. That's coming right after the recession in 2009. And so you can see why the board made those decisions, but we're in a position now that we got time. If we wait till 2036, it would be $55 rate increase at that time.
So I mean, I think that's, we talk about, 75-year, 80-year, like, I think what we're really talking about is being independent from regional contracts in 11 years. Like that's a time frame we can take a
Yeah.
bite.
Yep.
We can see, like, are we, so, and that's a whole nother way of looking at it, is to say, like, we want to be financially independent by 2036. And we'll work towards that. And then at that point, who knows what's happening, and, maybe there are other contracts that come and we can ease off the gas a little bit and be okay. Again, we can only operate with what we know.
Yeah.
And it's also a philosophy of, well, if we want regional waste, then we go out and we try and get it. And I think, and we're not doing that. That's not our board isn't wanting you to do
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
At some point, that may be something that this board says, like, well, yeah, we've got all these, life years. Let's go and actually market ourselves
Yeah.
to places and try and get contracts.
And I think people know we exist. So we've been approached, just like San Benito County, hey, we're going through this with, I think we entered into a 4+1+1 contract with them. It has a value of about 1.8 million, and depending on the volume, can go up to 2.4 million. So it just, that contract, and that was still done below the gate rate, philosophy, right? So that was done around almost $40 a ton, which is incrementally better than the large contract, but the goal is, how do we get to the point where they're paying at least the gate rate like everybody else, or it's an increased amount because the need exists, and those transfer costs are so high that it makes more sense to pay a little bit higher rate at the gate and have a closer destination than a far destination with an extraordinary cost with transport. So again, I think I'm hearing you very loud and clear, is that we like the projection, we like to see the revenue go, but on an annual basis, we take what we know and we apply it to the revenue goal. So if it's, the number is 6 on addition to what it is, we can deflate it based on operational wins or contract wins. If we got a power system connected and we're making
Right.
5 times the revenue on power generation, we can start making those assessments along the way to bring that revenue goal. But I'm hearing the goal is,
Yeah.
yes, put something together that demonstrates what that goal looks like. If nothing changed, if, as we evaluate every year, this year CPI, so we built the model and we use a number of 3.5 for the CPI calculation. Well, right now CPI is tracking, it may come out 3%. So that number would go from 3.5 to 3%. But the values are the values, and that's why hearing you guys talk about, well, what do we want? I think we want flexibility annually to maneuver that up or down based on the current position.
And also maybe start to have the opinion that when we do get a regional contract, that they pay our gate rate.
Yep.
So you're doing CPI plus 6, is that what your calculation is going forward and has been in the past? How has?
So I think there's two options. It could be 9% over trash, or it could be relative percentage over trash, organics, recycling, and the other components that we have if we desire to get it there. One item that I don't desire to put into the calculation for revenue dependency is the MRF dollars.
Right.
Because it's volatile, it goes up and down, and we don't wanna say, hey, well, that's gonna give us $1 million. And then next year the prices drop and we're paying $1 million, so there's a negative impact. So we will.
So you're coming up with those pieces of having those categories in there, so it's spread
Yeah,
out.
so we
all of
can-
the distance, right?
Yeah, so the number 9 can come down in theory.
Right,
Based on the other contributors
Right.
that we can add to the dollar value. So we're gonna present one which is a clean cut, 9% over trash,
Okay.
or X percentage over these other values, operation.
Clarification. Thank you.
Yes. Dave, I
Yeah,
know you're eager, I can see you like, yeah, I'm ready to jump
looking
in.
forward, right? I gave you the, I think it's important for us to know what mix, because we, like we're talking now, we have the situation where a good percentage of our revenue comes from these external tons. And, we can dial that up or down, so we could get a direction from the board that we want a 90% of our revenue coming from member agencies and 10% outside, 80-20, 75-25. And what that does in these next 11 years, it tells us what we need to pursue as far as business to be able to replace those tons. So that's where not only is it projecting what the tonnage cost is gonna be, it's also telling us strategically what we need to do business-wise to start those negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, because at this point, we've been passive, would you say? I mean, people know we're here, they bring us their contract, we evaluate it. And so, I think, that could also be a philosophy where we're.
Well, I think the district at one point was very non-passive, but they were very aggressive seeking these volumes, but I think over time, we didn't yield what we think we could yield to expand that even more, so this brings that. There's other items in the operation that have impacted that and stopped us from going and getting more volume, and that's really, how much do we wanna take on? Plus, how much landfill life is there, and that, I'm in my 4th year now. And now we're at these critical points where these are the remaining items for us to tighten up our laces and be prepared for 2036. This is the window, and if we decide not to do nothing this year, every year moving forward is the window, because the amount of what we're gonna be asking for inflates itself year over year, unless we're performing better year over year, in our standings with revenues and how much we have in our reserves. But I'm pretty excited. I think what we've heard from here and in the workshop is relative support around it, and what information do we need to have to distribute to the community, saying this is coming and this is why we're doing it. And we're probably gonna get a mixed result. Some people very happy. We got longer longevity, reduced volume coming into the landfill. Could be reasons why the community would support this. And then again, the independency. When you look at external volume being charged at a lesser rate, yet we're charging a different rate, creates an opinion as well. Ms. Zoe?
I would just add that I think you're exactly right on, that we have been in the past, prior to you joining as our general manager, been much more aggressive for those regional contracts. And I think the board's direction, this predates me, so I'm hearing it kind of third hand, and we have people in the room who've been here longer, was to kind of hit a percentage revenue goal, whereas before, landfill may have been 90% of our revenue, try to get closer to 50% to diversify our revenue across many different either commodity streams, all the things that we have available here on our site. And I think that was always kind of how we had measured ourselves as a district in terms of financial success and stability, was how diversified we were in those streams.
I think I got enough here.
You're good.
We'll come
Okay.
back in.
Okay,
We'll have the original version. We'll try to create a red line version so it's easy to track the difference in the two.
okay,
So I think item 5A is
okay,
the
great.
books. We have our task to go out there and rework this so that it's really aligning to the existing philosophies that we have.
Okay, perfect. So at this time, I'll take public comments. So if anyone, Bruce, would you like to make a comment on this particular item?
Yes, but I have a lot of comments that would probably take too much time for this meeting. And so if I could just send them to you and Felipe, and then maybe provide them to the board as part of the agenda for discussion next time. But I would like to perhaps meet and discuss my comments, just because I think they would take too much time at this meeting to go through them.
Okay,
And he could do that directly with me, so
Okay,
I'll take that on, so there's no violation of the Brown Act, and
okay,
just send me some dates, Bruce, and we'll get it on the calendar and we'll have the discussion.
Thank you.
okay, great. Super, thanks. All right, 5D, discuss the acceptance of regional waste revised November 2007.
So this one's more specific to the regional waste, which it may be a thought to combine the two. If it's appropriate or leaving them separate, I think staff will make a recommendation on that. We'll get it all on the new ReGen letterhead and get it cleaned up. This is guiding principles for acceptance of regional waste, which is out of the district waste or out of the county waste or out of the member agencies waste, I would say is more accurate. Again, we'll read through these. A lot of these look like they will continue to exist. There is item number 4 that I think probably will carry the bulk of the discussion. Regional rates received from the public agency will only be done by written agreement, and we're doing that now. The primary need of public agencies would be for a short intermediate landfill space while they work for a long-term solution of their solid waste disposal needs. I think that one kind of needs to be reworded because that's where we're at now. We're working on what are our needs now, and that philosophy is changing a little bit. So we'll work on making a staff.
Well, it says when they work, so in other words, when someone comes to us, like, we're expecting them to work out your own, like, we'll take your waste now until you work out your long-term solution. Is that what this is saying? That's
Yeah.
the way I'm reading
Yes,
this. Okay,
yes.
okay. And we don't put any contingencies on what other people are doing with their waste. It's,
That speaks to the term, I guess, so.
Right,
How long we
yeah.
would
okay,
get into an agreement for, if we think we can take it for, if they think, well, we need 5 years. To get our landfill expanded or
Right.
10 years or whatnot,
yeah,
then we could judge it based on that.
yeah,
Or not, I mean, this is when we can talk about
right,
changing that.
yeah, okay.
The sale of Monterey Regional Waste Management District excess landfill capacity will be subject to contract and approved by the board of directors, and we're doing that now as well. A reserved landfill capacity shall be established to provide an initial 75-year landfill life, which will serve for projected waste streams generated by Monterey Regional Waste Management District member agencies to at least the year of 2080. In other words, the amount of regional waste to be accepted will not reduce Monterey Regional Waste Management District certified landfill capacity below 75 years to 2080. Certified landfill capacity exceeding 75 years would be considered to be the excess landfill capacity, which should be made available to the sale on public agencies such as the County of Santa Cruz and Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority. Then we need to expand and reword, and we'll come back with some language that will alleviate. And I think really on here is, if we're gonna do a tier factor, that we do a tier factor evaluation. Possibly here as well, so this philosophy could change as we approach a period where we don't wanna have landfill percent.
Yeah, and at some point, I mean, they didn't follow this because we're taking waste from things that are not public agencies, right?
Yes.
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 Are we taking
That's-
things from private?
That's a good question. It's the public's waste.
Right,
Being managed,
Yeah, no matter who-
being
right.
managed and transported by a private company.
right,
So that's something to keep in consideration is we're still serving the public
right,
in a different way, but through a private entity. So
Yeah.
you're right, technically it is a private entity.
right,
Generators are the public.
yeah,
Well, like that one landfill that needed to use us for a short period of time while they were going through some changes. I mean, it was just, okay, we'll help you out for whatever it was. What was it?
It's the waste connection agreement, right? So it's the one that I just referenced that's worth about $2 million in today's dollars. And they're approaching the end of that, yet they're still in the same dilemma. They haven't decided transfer station or landfill expansion. They're kind of paying close attention, but we'll be knocking on their door saying, hey, your contract is now up. And if our desires change here, then our terms with them would change as well. You know, do we put them on an escalator? Hey, we'll go from 40 to X, and then every year after we get to 90%, like some of the others that were established, that go into 2050, could be the example of that. And it brings great opportunity. We've done quite a bit of things with that extra dollars. We CalPERS funding, we've done, you know, the liability funding, the capital investment policy to have more reserve there. So we're doing a lot with it, but this is again gearing towards being very in shape and ready to be independent at 2036. If we desire, that's not the case. And we can reframe this up in a different way, but over the last 3 years, this is kind of the pathway that we've been trekking. Yeah. We're good? Yeah. 5, the regional waste brought to Monterey Regional will be in subject to recycling and diversion programs acceptable to the state mandated diversion goal sets that happening now. The district will have the ability to shorten the contract term should the public agency not demonstrate adequate progress in the medium and long-term solution. So that's just contractual. 7, acceptance of regional waste will utilize only the district landfill operations and airspace. The regional waste will not require the use of any of the following services: material recovery facility, public drop-off facility, last chance mercantile reuse facility, HHW program, the composting facility, and public awareness program. Just meaning that those users are destined straight for the landfill and they're not utilizing other service, really showing why they got a reduction in the rate. But I think we can probably reevaluate what that reduction is, if any, right? And the final item, the negotiated landfill disposal fee will include an escalation clause for the district for future annual increases in cost. The regional waste will be transported to the district in either a large transport trailer truck or collection packer trucks to minimize the impact to public roads and maximize the efficiency for transportation and the landfill operations. So that's gonna remain the same. So we got a little work on these, but I'm hearing you guys loud and clear. We like to mesh them together with the CPI and the projection of the revenue goal. So philosophy aligns with this year's budgeted increase that we're gonna be putting forward. As we get there, at the board meeting, we need to be prepared to start letting the haulers know what that increase is, because they'll start putting in their requests to the municipalities. So I'm gonna put a lot of pressure on these 3 board members here to keep me on track to get us to a point where we can authorize a suggested amount, right? Whether it's the full 9% or it's spread out and it's a lesser number over those items, or just a value that we can use for this year as we reevaluate into the next year. But getting a number so that we can send out a letter. We normally send out a letter is we anticipate X increase, and it's still contingent of the board approval. Rob helped me draft it a few years back. And maybe we want to give a percentage that will only come down and not go up, right? So we want to be really close to what that number will be. If it's 9, then it's 9, and if the number winds up being 7.5, well, they can make the change to their calculation, but the request won't have to go back because it's only a reduction in that rate component. Well, thank you guys for the feedback. A lot of work that needs to be done here, but I think it's appropriate as we go into the budget season, and really helps us align what we are gonna authorize or not authorize in the next budget based on these decisions.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this. I mean, just having that workshop fresh in our minds and then being able to come here and start discussing these, I think is really.
And I wanna thank staff. I wanna thank Aida, because the fast turnarounds, right? We have a board meeting, and then we have like a week to compile what's coming to this meeting. And then we have about 2 weeks to get to what's the next meeting. So these next several months, they're gonna be a little chaotic. And we're getting a lot better in our process. eScribe is catching up to the paper process, so we're excited about that. But staff continuously trying to improve how we get agendas, appropriate sizes of the agenda, what needs to happen now, what can wait till later. So we're doing all those evaluations and improving our process. But thank you guys for always having feedback for us to improve our process.
Yeah, thank you. Any comment on this item? No, okay. Update on fiscal year 25-26 budget.
At this time, I'll leave it up to Garth and Helen just to give a quick update on what's expected to be coming in the near future. I anticipate we will have budget schedules. And then also, looking at timeline to achieve a draft budget and then also, present the final so that we can have it approved to allow enough time for the 30-day notification that needs to be published, in one of the local papers, letting people know that we're gonna have a rate increase. So this is how.
So I'll start off.
But, sorry, Bruce, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a very quick, on the last item. I hope that
Yeah.
the 2005 guiding principles for acceptance of regional waste will be included in the white paper as a, appendix, if it's not already. That's all.
All right, thank you, Bruce.
So I just want to give a little update as far as the timeline for the budget. In the past, the budget process actually started in March. We're going to accelerate that with first discussion today with regards to the rate increases. And the reason for that is we don't want to be waiting until June to have the public hearing and then having to wait till after July to implement any rate changes. So we want to make sure we implement as of July 1st. So as far as the schedule is concerned, today we'll start the preliminary discussions on rate increases. And then next month in April, we will bring forward to the board a preliminary budget and continue the discussion on rate increases. And then in May, we'll bring back the final budget and schedule the public hearing so that we can pass the rate increases and create all the brochures and give adequate notices. So that's what our goal is for the budget season. So we have already started departmental budgets. They've already started getting their budgets together, and in the next week or so, we're gonna start getting everybody together and start consolidating for the first preliminary budget outlook and going through that with the AM team.
Yeah.
Right, and then Bart? Anything to add?
Well, what Helen said, another big component in the budget preparation is the capital spend budget. So, the operating budget is one part which takes a lot of time and that input from a lot of different people, but the capital spending budget is also very significant. So that'll get going, ideally in the next couple of weeks, and that's basically two components. There's a mobile equipment capital spend budget, which would be any of the yellow iron that we're using out of landfill or any other vehicles on site. And then there's the capital improvement side of it, which is larger projects like the power connection or the things going on in the landfill. So site out there, those are the bigger ones, and those tend to be the most money. But that will need to be prepared. And that is a 5-year plan that we put together for the capital spend for both the mobile and the capital improvement. So that takes quite a bit of input from a lot of people.
I just want to add on the capital spend budgets is, we have Jay really handling the equipment with Efrain. We have David really handling all the project items on there, and we're refining the list. We had an active list that was 3.5 pages from back, and cells, every line was filled with some sort of activity. So we're trying to create the priority list for us. We also want to have the capital spend that we can afford. Right, the last 5-year projection showed us running out of money in 5 years. Thus, I don't want to have that projection where we're running out of money. So we're going back to the drawing board. We're being more transparent on the projects, the project summary. Why are we doing it? What's the values that we're getting out of it? The existing one had very little data in it, had a lot of dollars amounts. I'm assuming there was a lot of draft work on what the cost could be based on knowledge of the industry. We're going to refine it. We're going to get a little better, and we're not going to project ourselves to run out of money in 5 years. So, thus, this year's budget is a task. It has a lot of components that are just not regular based on my first 3 years here, but tracking the course that we wanted to track based on all the board discussions that we've heard. So I'm really excited. Again, this will be a milestone for the organization if we can at least just start trekking in the right direction and make these annual decisions based on the philosophy is we're running out of time, the 11-year period. There's a goal that we need to achieve, or we find ourselves in a non-preferable pricing market to get rid of land space or to make up those differences. So I think to set us up, get us in the right path, and we're gonna have victories along the way, like the LOC system, like selling more power at a more valued cost or preferable cost for the organization. Those will lessen the impact, but we should come with the full impact number. So if nothing changed and we didn't get any better anywhere, that this would be the number that could still make us have the determination that landfill life is in the hands of the member agencies, and then we decide as the need becomes to negotiate that off, or maybe we get to the point where we do want to reduce the rate. And we want to get that back, so we start a contract with somebody for a short period of time, reduce the rate for a period of time. And then we go back to the drawing board of, hey, do we want to continue that or not? But the balance and relevancy will be on our terms and not somebody else's. That's the difference of our pathway now.
Dave?
And also thing to consider as we talk about the capital plan is land use. Something we may want to add into the guiding principles is, as we talked in the workshop, there's the compost yard and the truck yard, which are in landfill footprint. And if we want to, depending on how much waste we receive, and if we want to maintain those and that infrastructure there, then there are capital improvements that need to occur. There's land that needs to be purchased in the timeframes, and it all gets accelerated if we increase tonnage. So maybe that may be something to add into the
I think
guiding principle. Is what do we want? Do we want to keep a compost yard here? Et cetera.
No, it's good. It's good to kind of take all those pieces in mind as we move forward. All right, any other comments on this? Public comment on this item? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. 5D fiscal year 2024 audited financial statement.
This is Nathan Edelman. He's a partner with the audit firm Bailey. He's been doing the valley past several years. And Nathan, I'll let you summary of what 24 audit.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, let's talk about accounting for a few minutes. So, yeah, my name is Nathan Edelman with Bailey, and I am the independent external auditor. I think within the package, you have the financial statements, audited financial statements as of fiscal year June 30, 2024. So I'm not going to go into the financial statements, but I do want to give you just kind of an executive overview of what is it that we did, what is the scope of the audit, as well as the results of the audit. So first, we say audit, and just to define that for a moment. Financial statements have balance sheets, income statements, there's debits and credits, there's cash, payables, receivables, revenue. There's a lot of things that go into those financial statements. There are also notes, a series of notes that follow. A lot of this information is required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the GASB board. And really what we do as auditors is ask questions. We look at source documents. Thank you. Our job, our scope is to make sure that these financial statements are complete and accurate, and that they comply with those accounting rules. That is, I guess I say on the highest level, that is the scope that we want to look at. The accounting principles and just really let's make sure that these are accurate, complete and accurate. There are what we call estimates. Most of the items within these financial statements, it's objective. How much cash is in the bank as of June 30? We can confirm it. What was revenue? We can verify it's an objective dollar amount that's reported. There are estimates, and those are for here, and these are common with any other government that you sit on. Pension and OPEB, post-employment benefits. Here you also have this municipal solid waste landfill estimate, a little bit unique because, not too many governments are landfills. But estimates have, some range of estimation uncertainty because there's estimates that go into them. So if we're talking about pension, there's estimates about mortality, estimates about interest rates, about investment returns. And these estimates flux the number left or right. It can be quite significant. In the case of pension, it's CalPERS, and so really you have an external agency, CalPERS, that making all of these decisions, and folks here are really just implementing what CalPERS has said, and that's kind of very similar from we sit on cities or other local governments, very similar. The OPEB, when I say OPEB, it's other post-employment benefits. When folks retire, it's medical, as opposed to the pension. OPEB is something that is a little more under the control of the district because it is your own program. So they hire an actuary has to come up with the numbers. And really, we're just making sure that these numbers are consistent with the accounting standards and making sure that they're correct. They then have to get translated on all of these estimates, really as in everything else as well, but translated from what the actuary says to debits and credits to accounting records and making sure that those get reported into the financial statement. So really kind of a high level scope of the audit, make sure that all of these things are correct. And then, as we go about doing this, we ask questions, we look at documents. The expectation, the way that the audit standards work is that the financial statements, they are the responsibility of the district. The folks on the finance side, they put together the numbers, they close the books, they reconcile the accounts. Audit expectation is that these numbers are accurate and there really are not any changes. So if auditors come in and say, if you told us, cash was $1 million and it was actually 800,000, as an example, that's what we call an audit adjustment, as in the auditors are saying adjustments are necessary for those financial statements to be correct, to be complete and accurate. And that's what we call an internal control deficiency, because the process should be set up so that the numbers that are presented to the board, the numbers that are given to us when we start the audit, that those are complete, those are accurate. There really shouldn't be any changes that come about from the audit. Audit should just confirm what we've been told. Should just confirm that the numbers are accurate. Take a drink of water. So with all that, results of the audit. Anyway, within the entire packet, 100 pages is the financial statements with all of the notes. There's a couple of pages has the firm letterhead, and that's our responsibility, which is to report back the results of the audit. We design the audit procedures, we ask the questions, and we report back the results of the audit. Kind of there's two big takeaways. One, there's an opinion on the financial statements, so whether or not the financial statements comply with the accounting rules. And that's what we call a clean or unmodified audit opinion. It goes on for a couple of pages, has some language, but really it says financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. And that is the expected outcome of the audit. It means that the numbers in the annual financial report are complete and accurate. They comply with the accounting rules. We did identify there's what we call a deficiency in an internal control. We do have audit adjustments, and I've seen lots of audit adjustments all over the place. I've probably seen more than you have just because I do a lot of these audits. So there were adjustments involving the pension and OPEB, and it's that translation from the actuarial valuations through these debits and credits to be presented in accordance with those accounting rules. And so that is an internal control deficiency. And that is something that is required to be reported. And I don't want to understate it because it's required to be reported and therefore it is significant. And when I say required by the audit standards, they say what you have to report. So there should not be any adjustments, but the other end of it is kind of narrowly targeted because pension and OPEB is something that happens kind of at the end of the year. And the adjustments involve really it's translation of the actuarial evaluation through these debits and credits, which is different than the things that have to happen on a daily basis. So there's no adjustments involving payables, receivables, no adjustments involving actual pension payments that go out to people. So it's kind of a narrow internal control deficiency, but it is something that does need to be addressed. And we have had discussions about it, and it sounds like there is a plan, as in, I believe that there is a understanding of it, and there's a plan, so that I would expect this time next year, there is not an internal control deficiency. So really, that's the scope of the audit, results of the audit. So really with that, I can certainly talk more about the audit, talk more about the financial statements, but I'll turn it over to the board members, and I'm happy to try and answer your questions.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, can I get a reader's digest of that control deficit? So he just wasn't crossing his T's and dotting his I's. What specifically was his deficiency in?
Yeah, so they're I got it. Translating the actuarial valuation. So for example, pension, that's the largest one, CalPERS pension. CalPERS provides an actuarial valuation, and it goes on, it's 50 pages, talks about a lot of things. But it has what's called a net pension liability. It has deferred inflows and deferred outflows, and it's got a lot of things in here that have to get translated to debits and credits to be recorded in the financial statements. And it's something that happens really just at the end of the year during the year-end closing process. The folks on the finance side, they reconcile cash payables. They have to figure out these, I'll call them, I guess, year-end, I'll call them conversion entries, I guess, for pension. And those numbers were not calculated correctly. There was a difference between when we come in and do the audit and we say, here's what the net pension liability should be. I don't remember what the exact number was, but it should be, 5 million, and you say it's 3 million. And figuring those out, those are adjustments that we had to figure out as we went about the audit, changes that resulted from the audit, and that's the internal control deficiency. Okay.
And you got it figured out, right?
Yes, we have it figured out, and we have a plan going forward, so it will never happen again.
All right. Great, sounds good.
I think it's targeted, it's narrow, it's fairly narrow, as in makes it somewhat easy. I mean, it's a complicated number, but it's easier kind of to figure out and resolve for the future.
Sounds good.
Dr. Barber, any comments?
No, I mean, you broke it down quickly, thank you. And, they already have a plan dealing with pension and OPEB and going forward, so, I guess, my thing would just be like to make sure that, you don't hear that part again, but I also know that he did say that, with pension, you're dealing with the outside source too, with CalPERS, so, I'm sure it takes some coordination there as well.
I just have a quick question, just to make it easier, I know the evaluation is difficult between the CalPERS and OPEB. You just have to give us a letter grade for our audit, what would that be?
Oh, no, okay, so, yeah, it's a good question, so.
I mean, just for our public and our people, did we have a good audit, is that A work, or is it B work, or is it like, on the?
Right.
Oh, no, so I should be clear too, I mean, there's a lot of things that they need to give us and a lot of questions that we ask, and the folks on the finance side, our primary contact, they're very cooperative, they give us everything that we need, so I mean, we're not like struggling, I mean, we're all on the same page to get everything completed, so, there's no real, A, B, C grade, but on the higher spectrum of good grades in school, if I was a teacher, I guess.
So an A minus.
That's right.
It's our bond rating.
Well, we appreciate the work, Garth, we appreciate your work as well.
Yeah, thank you.
It helps a
Thank you very
lot
much.
when it comes to auditing.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that you work differently moving forward. That's great. Bruce, do you have a comment on this agenda item?
Yeah, on page 12 of the audit, it states that in 23-24, operating expenses were over budget 6.8 million. And so I just wanted to ask the auditor, is that a concern?
Wait, I couldn't quite hear, what was the?
Page 12. you said?
Well,
Page 12 and the MD&A.
Operating expenses over budget 6.8 million.
Well. Oh, so I am probably not the best person to respond about budgetary variances, kind of an analysis from the district. I would really prefer that to the district folks that want anything meaningful.
so that's not something of concern to an auditor.
Wait, so make sure I get where am I looking exactly?
The first, the bullet point there under fiscal year 23-24.
The third bullet point.
Page 12.
So Bruce, just a quick comment. The district is not subject to, we are not required to have a budget. We use the budget to monitor our expenses. So what the district does is we need to be able to justify why we have a variance with the budget. And last year, as we all know, we had the MRF, what was that called?
Baylor.
The Baylor, which cost us a lot of money. We had the LFG downage and we had other expenses that popped up. That's what caused some of this variance. And so that's, it's, as long as it's explained to the board, that's what's necessary. So, and I believe you can confirm that we're not subject to, that's why we don't have a required supplementary information that most, like the city, they have an RSI section that shows the difference variance from budget to actual and budget to, amended budget to the final and so forth. We don't have that as a special district.
Oh, yeah, and I see the bullet point now. So I guess from an audit perspective, we're not asking, we would not audit the reason for the variances between the budget and actual. We want to make sure that the financial statements are accurate or complete so that users of the financial statements have, valid information so that they can make decisions. Really just making sure that the document is correct, but we wouldn't be looking at, did you do a good job not running the district, or what is the reason for the variance? There is a requirement that we look at what's called going concerns, as in if there's a reason why we believe that the district could become, well, I'll just say insolvent for illustrative purposes. And that's really kind of over the next operating cycle. So if we think that over a little bit of simplification, but if we think over the next year, the district is would go into bankruptcy, that is something that's required to be called out as part of the audit. And you're apart from there. So we're not concerned about that, but aside from that, really, the budget is the budget, and our job is to make sure that the information is there for users.
Yeah, okay, great. All right.
Okay,
super.
and then on page 14, it talks about net position and it talks about $80 million in liabilities. How does the board know if that's great or if that's terrible?
Bruce, where are you at with that?
Page 14, net position. Total liabilities, 79 million, page 14 of the audit report. Anyway, it's just a general question. Whatever the liabilities are, how do we know if that's good or bad?
Any staff member?
Well, I'll be happy to jump in. I mean, you can look at your, net revenue versus your debt ratio, which we did in our workshop, which was roughly 76 million. In debt with about $40 million of, unrestricted cash, restricted cash, and designated cash. So I'm feeling very healthy at this point with where we're at in the organization. So additional expenses are attributed to the operational needs at the time. And when we came in, there was a lot of deferred work that we're catching up on, and that's the position that we've been over the last 3 years, is continuing to focus on the infrastructure need. But I agree with the assessors. We're far from being in trouble at this point, thus making these decisions that we're making now relative before we get to a point where we don't have the support that we have right now on our buildings. So I'm feeling very comfortable where we're at.
Okay, thank you. What's the relationship between liabilities and debt ratio? You know, if we have $80 million in liabilities, does that relate to our debt ratio?
Explain the differential calculation to this.
Not so much to explain the, just the relationship between the liabilities and our 1.25 debt ratio.
Well, the 1.25 number comes from our assets and in relation to our liabilities. And in any business operation, you want to have more assets than you do liabilities, because that is an indication of how solvent the operation is, that you're not gonna get overburdened by debt. So even though we've got, $76 million, $79 million rather of liabilities at the end of 2024, we've got
155 assets.
we've got $155 billion in assets. So you look at what's our liability number, compare that to our asset number. So our assets are significantly greater than our liability number, almost by 2. So, it's a situation of somebody's not gonna look at the numbers and say, gee, this place might go out of business because they don't have enough assets to cover all of their liabilities. Well, we do.
Yeah.
And, the number that we have, or the debt ratio number, is, actually, it's calculated, the debt ratio number, and I think maybe what you may be referring to, Bruce, is the debt bond covenant. It says our bond debt service has to be at least 1.25 to 1.
Yes, because Felipe brought that up in response to my question, and so I wanted to know the relationship between, how that relates to the total liability question I had. But I feel totally satisfied now learning what you and Felipe just educated me about. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
One other point to the auditor, if we, the district, wanted an outside opinion on our reserve policy, what expert would that be? Would it be an auditor, or would it be some other type of professional, financial advisor?
Oh, outside, someone, opinion on the reserve policy, that's something I can ask around about. I'm sure we have folks at the firm that would at least be able to talk with the folks of the district and have that conversation and put you in the right direction. I don't know.
Okay, that's okay.
Not-
It's just
not
one
me.
person right now, me, so no action needed there. I just know that we talk a lot about reserve policy, and I often think, what would an outside expert advice be to our staff and to our board as we discuss, various reserve policies that we might have. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to, well, thank you, Nathan, for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah.
We got for me.
I think we're good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. General Manager Communications.
I have none at this time, Chair.
Okay, great. Do we have any future agenda items we want to discuss? I think we're probably good. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you April 2nd for our next Finance Committee meeting.